It would be hard to argue that the most famous son of South Africa is anyone other than Nelson Mandela. Here's a figure that I've always admired and I've always been drawn to. There was something magnetic about his energy, the way he would smile, and when you understand the struggle which he faced, it's perhaps even more impressive the character that he continued to have once he was freed. I'm not ashamed to say, in preparation for my visit to Cape Town, I listened to the audiobook of Long Walk to Freedom, which was probably about my fourth time listening to that book, and I consider it to be a really instrumental story of perseverance, vision and struggle, and I was really looking forward to learning more about Nelson Mandela's story and the story of South Africa, and to be a part of it and to see whether his vision had come to fruition, and also the intricacies of being a nation with such a diverse set of people living inside it, each with their own narrative and interests. After a short boat trip from Cape Town, I arrived at Robben Island, which was a maximum security prison from 1960 to 1991, and is really a symbol of the cruelty and repression of the apartheid system in South Africa. Robben Island is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The first part of the tour consisted of a bus trip where you're driven around the island and you see the various sites.
Surfacing the roads of the island was done within the first 6 months. For 13 years, they were just punished, tortured, because they would mine the limestone today, take it from point A to point B. The first democratic parliament of this country.
It's quite a sobering thought, and it's quite hard to believe that within this limestone quarry on Robben Island, inside this cave, this is one of the most significant places in South Africa's history. And it was here that during the breaks from the relentless labour that Nelson Mandela and his fellow prisoners gathered to talk about philosophy, literature, history, and most importantly, their vision of a free nation. And it was hidden from the guards. This cave became a refuge, and it was a sanctuary of thought amid the punishment. And many have called this cave the first democratic parliament of South Africa, because it was here that men who were stripped of every freedom imagined a country built on equality and justice. The work in the quarry had no purpose. The limestone was never needed, but out of this place of hardship, a flicker of hope was kept alive. And from these stones of suffering, the foundations of South Africa's democracy began to form. And the truth is, whilst Nelson Mandela gets much of the praise and admiration, there were many heroes who were part of the same struggle and who were prepared and did give their lives to achieve their goals. Robert Sobukwe's story on Robben Island is different from the others. Unlike the political prisoners in the main section, he was kept in complete isolation in a small house here, away from everybody else. The apartheid government feared the power of his ideas so deeply that they passed a special law, the Sobukwe Clause, to keep him imprisoned indefinitely without trial. He wasn't allowed to speak to other inmates. Yet his presence on the island became a quiet symbol of resistance, and a reminder that even when silenced, conviction can't be contained. Sobukwe was the founder and leader of the Pan-Africanist Congress, the PAC, a movement that broke away from the ANC over strategy and ideology. The PAC emphasised African unity and self-determination. On the 21st of March 1960, Sobukwe led a national campaign against South Africa's pass laws. There used to be such a thing as the Dom Pass, which means dumb pass. It means stupid pass in Afrikaans, and was a key symbol of apartheid oppression in South Africa. Every black South African over the age of 16 was forced to carry it. Robert Sobukwe led a nationwide campaign against this and told people to not carry their pass. He and his followers deliberately left their passes at home and presented themselves for arrest in a non-violent act of defiance. The government responded with mass arrests spanning both the PAC and the ANC. Sobukwe was sentenced to 3 years in prison for incitement, but when his sentence ended, the regime passed the Sobukwe Clause, a special amendment allowing them to keep him detained indefinitely without trial. He was then sent to Robben Island, where he was held in total isolation from other prisoners for 6 years. It can be easy to take all of our freedoms and privileges for granted because we have never had to struggle the same way Mandela and Sobukwe and others had to struggle just for the simple rights and freedoms that we take for granted every day. The part of this tour that really stuck with me the most is when our guide Tom Moses, who was a former inmate of Robben Island, spoke to us before we went round. It could be easy to consider this a tourist attraction and to be detached from the serious reality of what happened here. But having somebody who actually was imprisoned here speak not only of what happened, but of what is happening and how the idea of reconciliation, despite being an olive branch and being a momentous gesture, there is still deep visceral pain. There hasn't been closure or justice for many people. There are many people who are still asking what happened to their loved ones and who have never seen the people who have enacted these atrocities say sorry for their part in this oppressive, brutal, humiliating and inhumane system of treating people.
I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons will live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an idea for which I hope to live for and to see realized. But my Lord, if it needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die.
Perhaps I'm projecting this, but I could feel a presence when I looked into his cell. It's incredible to think of what must have been going through his mind all of those nights that he spent there, day after day, thinking about the rest of his life and what lay ahead of him, what he was missing out on, whether he would live to ever leave the island whether he would ever live to see a free South Africa. Before I left, I asked Tom what message he would send to the world.
Is that humanity needs to change. For as long as humanity does not change, it means the violence that goes on, what we see happening today, happens around the world.
It's hard to imagine that in a place that is so beautiful, so close by on Robben Island, so much cruelty happened and so much injustice. Tom Moses was a fantastic guide who himself is a hero of the struggle. And despite the immense personal cost he faced, he still treats everybody as human beings with a smile, dignity, and love. So I'm back from my trip to Robben Island. It was an incredible experience. There's definitely a very intricate history of the island, but then also of apartheid and the system of injustice. People go there as a pilgrimage to Nelson Mandela. He is a figure that unites people and that people still revere to this day because of the example that he set. A person that's prepared to give his life for his struggle, for his people, for his cause, which is not something that we feel in abundance of today's world leaders. What was great about this experience was that we were taken around by somebody who himself was actually a former inmate called Tom Moses. He told us firsthand the harshness and the reality of being there. How they weren't just prisoners, they were treated inhumanely, beaten, humiliated, kept in isolation, deprived human connection, decent food, and just made to suffer. It was about psychological torment and punishment for daring to speak up against the powers that be that existed in the apartheid system. And that's why the story of Nelson Mandela is so incredible. A man who suffered so much, was prepared to pay the price. In his book, he says, when a man is denied the right to lead the life he believes in, he has no choice but to become an outlaw. Even in today's world, we are seeing lots of people being categorized as terrorists or criminals or being arrested for fighting for what they believe in, even if they do so peacefully. What we saw in apartheid South Africa was an era of tyranny. The real question is, and the question that Tom Moses is asking is that era really over? Has reconciliation actually served justice? By forgiving people for their sins, has that corrected the injustices and the inequities that the apartheid system created? I think it would be fair to say that many people would say that the injustices haven't been entirely overwritten. There are still neighborhoods where there isn't access to schools and libraries, and that the inequalities continue to persist. And in fact, some of the people that were responsible for the suffering of people at Robben Island never saw justice. There's no doubt reconciliation. Coming out of prison for 27 years and choosing reconciliation was incredibly powerful, and that's why his legacy lives on today. That's why I chose to go to Robben Island. That's why so many people around the world choose to go to Robben Island. But the struggle continues. And that's the important thing about struggle. Maybe it is a never-ending battle, but the reason we fight is not always to win, but we fight for hope. And as long as we have hope, we have something to fight for. Hope is like the light that you can see in the darkness. No matter how dark things are, even the tiniest amount of light can feel like hope. So, and I just wanted to leave with this actually. So Tom Moses, the guy who took us around, fan of Liverpool, Orlando Pirates and Ajax. He was arrested at 19. He then served in Robben Island. He was made to spend a large amount of time in isolation. He was humiliated, beaten, brutalized, and treated inhumanely. He was released, and then 4 days later, he was rearrested and sent to another prison. When he was finally released, it was the day before his mother had passed away. And I'm sure that his mother is very proud of him. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I've not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.